Hey, good morning, members of the Well community and friends of the Well community and others who might be catching this video. But this is Joel coming to you on April 9th, Thursday, April 9th, with the first message of the Well community that's going out online to all the Snapchats and stuff, just to continue our community's growth in following Jesus and trying to be together. So we're in these unusual times where the world is, I don't know, experiencing a lot of uncertainty and some really consequential things. Many people are dying. But Alice asked me last week, she said, "Hey, Joel, would you be willing to preach a sermon, to put it out on YouTube for our members and for others?" And so I said, "Yeah, I'm game." And so here I am at my dining room table on this beautiful Thursday morning. This is where my family gathers to eat regularly. And if you can see here in the mirror, here at the table, we have my shrine to Oak Cliff. Now, I don't know where that sign came from. Stories won't tell. But if you notice the other art on the wall, we have members of the Well community's art. And so there's a piece by Halbert Bowens, a piece maybe by James Johnson. I love this piece over here of my friend Becky by Clara Miller. And then a great piece of art by Charlotte Ware, one of my friends who so inspires me from Cliff Temple. And so when we sit here around this table, we often think of you guys. And so it's real easy as I look at the wall this morning that you're in my hearts. And so even though we're not in the same room together, I'm really excited to be giving you this message because even though, we're not physically together, I really do feel like that we are together in spirit. And I hope that as you watch this video, maybe you watch it once, twice, share it with a friend, whatever, that you feel encouraged today. Just a quick report. Whenever I preach at the Well, I do that, about every other month. I always give you a report. You know that my wife, Deborah, is pregnant. The baby is due on April 20th. That is in 11 days. And so we're in the nesting phase. We're expecting that baby to come at any point. It's going to be a little baby boy, and his name is, drumroll, Theo. And so Theo will be here really soon. We have 7 people in our house right now. So besides myself and Deborah, Grace is 17 and doing great, doing school from home right now. My adopted daughter, Kayla, is living with us and doing great. Her brother, Laron, is here with us. And then we have 2 other roommates, Rachel and Randolph. And so on good days, we're just a blessed and beloved community. On other days, we're just a crazy boarding house. And so somewhere in between, mostly the good stuff is what's happening around here. Josh is working out at MetroCare, and I'll just ask that you be praying for him because as Josh is leading a clinic at MetroCare, they've been trying to move things to this online thing, and he's just been really busy. And so just I know that for all people in the mental health community that are learning to do things in this social distance era, just ask that you be praying for him and for those people. I've been growing. I've been off since March 6th for spring break. I'm teaching 4th grade these days. So you can see my coronavirus beard. I've just been letting it grow. Maybe by the time I come to you this summer, hopefully not, it'll be a full crazy thing. I'll be a wild man. But hopefully this virus will, I think everybody's praying, and I'm praying that things will continue to improve and that we can, start to see each other again. So I'm excited to be with you guys. Can I just pray? Because that's what I normally do when I preach. And so I'm just going to lift up a word of prayer right now before I share this word with you guys. Okay. So God, I pray right now and just ask that my heart might be ready to give this message. I pray for my friends that will be hearing and listening to this message, and just ask that they might be touched by your Spirit, God, even though we're not in the same room and can't physically give each other a hug and give each other a high five and a greeting. I just pray that every person who listens to this video might really feel deeply, deeply connected to you, Father, and to each other, all the members of the Well. And so may love come through this video. Amen. So today, kind of with my tradition, I'm going to be preaching from the lectionary. The lectionary is just kind of a group of texts in the Bible that churches all over the world use all the time. And so today is Maundy Thursday. In the church calendar, we're coming up on Easter on Sunday. Tomorrow is Good Friday, the day that traditionally we remember that Jesus was was nailed to the cross before his resurrection on Sunday, on Easter Sunday. But Maundy Thursday is an interesting day. It's the night before Jesus was crucified, before he was killed, and he shares a meal with his friends. And so the text today, there's a text from John, Exodus, Psalms, and 1 Corinthians. And so I'll put a link to the verses down at the bottom so you can click and you can read the Bible along with me. But I'm going to be referring maybe to all four of those texts today. Definitely the John passage is what I want to focus on. And so to get us started here, I just thought that I would read you some of the John passage, okay? So this is in John 13. If you've got your Bibles, you can hit pause, go to John chapter 13. I'm going to read about the first 17 verses. I might not read it just directly through, but I'm gonna give you some excerpts, okay? And so it starts off, again, this is where Jesus has been in Jerusalem for about a week. And on this Thursday night, he's ready to celebrate the Passover with his friends, with his mother. There were probably some other women there, the other Marys and other people. And they gather in this room, Jesus' band of friends and disciples, and they're going to celebrate the Passover together. And so it's John 13 starts off, it says, it was just before the Passover festival. And Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave the world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. We'll come back to that later, but I like that. He loves us to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and it goes on and talks about how Judas, one of Jesus's friends, disciples, had been tempted and pushed to betray him, which would happen later that evening. And so Jesus knew, hear that again, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. Imagine like someone putting on an apron almost, the clothes of a servant. After that, he poured water into a basin, into a bowl, and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not know now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath only need to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For Jesus knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said that not everyone was clean. When he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes, returned to his place. "Do you understand? Do you know what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." You hear that? I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Skipping down from verse 17 to 31. Jesus later said, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself and will glorify him at once. My children, my beloved children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come." But then Jesus says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this will everyone know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." And that's the gospel text for this week, John 13. So I wanted to share a few things from this passage. I may refer again to Corinthians or Exodus. But when I read this passage this week, I was just kind of thinking about it. And one of the things, probably you heard as I read, was I was really struck by the word know. Jesus knows. It says it about 5 times in that passage that Jesus realizes something. He understands something. And rightfully so. I think most of us, when we think of Jesus as the Son of God, we recognize that Jesus, all through the Gospels, has special knowledge. He knows something that the rest of the people around him don't know. And this passage kind of leads us to believe that Jesus knows things. But we also remember that Jesus is the Son of Man. And so when I think about these things where he knows what the Father is doing, he knows who's going to betray him, he knows that his time has come. I think that instead of just thinking of some supernatural knowledge, that Jesus was just a really mindful person. There was supernatural knowledge, absolutely. But he had so cultivated a relationship with the Father that he knew what the Father was up to. He could read the signs. He could see and hear and know what was going on around him. He knew that something was wrong with Judas, that there was something. Man, the church sometimes has beat up Judas, but I just think, what trauma in him, what caused him to give up on the one that loved him so much? And I still have hope for Judas because I think there's the redemption of all things. And I think even Judas and even in the suicide, he is a person that it can be redeemed. And Jesus knew that there was something going on. He knew the betrayal was coming. He knew that the cross was coming. He knew that the people of Jerusalem were riled up against him and that he was doing things to be faithful to the Father that was going to get him in trouble. And so when we look at this text, we just see that Jesus knows. He sees and hears everything that's going on around him. And I think that that's a message for us. I've preached this sermon so many times at the well, just that God hears the cries of his children. In the Exodus 12 passage for today that you can read down at the bottom, it's the beginning of the Passover, the original Passover. And I love in Exodus 3, and there's a bunch of other verses that talk about this, but just where God says, I have heard my people's cries. You hear that? God hears the cries of his people. God hears your cries. And so in the midst of this coronavirus, in the midst of this uncertainty where people are afraid of losing jobs or have lost their jobs, where people are getting sick and dying or are afraid of getting sick and dying, God sees what's going on with us. God knows what's going on with you. He hears your cries. And so, I don't know, I just want you to be encouraged by that we do not have a God who just hides his eyes, hides his ears and says, I don't want anything to do with this world. No, God is active. He's listening and hearing everything that goes on with us. And so this passage talks about that Jesus knows. The second thing that I think plays into this is that Jesus acts. Now, we got to have both. If he acts without hearing, then maybe he's given us stuff that we don't need. But see, God hears our cries, and then out of his goodness, out of his love, he gives good things to his children. He provides what's needed. The scripture over and over talks about that. And so in this passage, we can see that Jesus acts. He knows that his time has come. And so what does he give to his disciples? He washes their feet. And it's not explicit right here in John 13, but in this, around this place of washing their feet, around this meal is where Jesus gives the instructions for what we call the Lord's Supper, communion, Eucharist, the Mass. Jesus says he takes a piece of bread. So I thought I'd get a piece of bread this morning as a reminder that in that upper room, that smells good. I'm a little hungry for breakfast. But in around that table, Jesus takes bread, he blesses it, he breaks it. He says, this is my body that is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. He takes a cup. I usually don't start at 8 o'clock in the morning with a glass of wine. So I've got my empty cup here. But Jesus takes a cup. He says, this cup, my blood, is a promise of the new covenant, the new relationship that we have. Take this, drink, and do this in remembrance of me. And so Jesus is washing feet. He's sharing an actual meal, and he's giving us this symbol of what he is up to, that he loves his people. He forgives us. He feeds us. He fellowships with us. And then ultimately, Jesus knows what's about to come. We celebrate here at Easter that Jesus wanted to demonstrate, God wanted to demonstrate his love for us by sending his son to die on the cross. That's how much he loved us. That's how much he serves us by sending his son to the cross. And so we have this washing of feet, gathering at the table, the breaking of bread, the cup, and ultimately the cross. Now, right there, we've got three of the most important symbols and traditions of the church. Okay, it's sad that this Sunday we can't gather for Easter Sunday. But you know what? I've got news for you. Easter has happened. Jesus has died on the cross and rose again. And so whether this year we get to have Easter, it breaks my heart, but at the same time, I recognize that it's done. Jesus went to that cross because he loved us so much, and that love continues. We don't need a religious service this year to keep that going. God's love is for you right now. In the same way, the washing of the feet. Isn't that amazing to think that we have a God that I don't know, the cross, I don't die for my friends around them, but I seek to be one who serves those around me. I seek to be one who blesses those around me. And so when Jesus washes his feet, he says, I'm your teacher and Lord. Hey, look what I'm doing. I'm getting down on my hands and feet. I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm washing your feet. I think one time in the history of the well, we did that. We got buckets of water and we got towels and we washed each other's feet. And I remember washing Will's feet, and to do that, I didn't feel humbled. I just felt, I didn't feel humiliated. I felt humbled out of love to do that to my friend Will. And when someone washed my feet, I can't remember who did. I just remember being blown away by the love in that tender moment. And that's what God does for us. He washes his feet. So not only does God hears his cries, the cries of his people, he acts for us. And so today, wherever you're at, wherever you need, whatever the cry of your heart is, know that God is acting. He wants to be close to you, to fellowship with you. He wants to forgive whatever is blocking that kind of fellowship. He wants to feed you and to give good things to you. Jesus acts. And that's what these scriptures are all about. So God knows. Number two, God acts. But this passage says, it takes it a little further. And Jesus says, he says, you know what? He says, I want you to do as I've done. I've set you an example. And so now you have to know, you have to act. And so in this passage, I think that in these days of coronavirus, we really need to think about how we can be a blessing to each other. Jesus says, the light of the world says that you are the light of the world. Let that sink in. You're the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. I'm here today giving you this message, taking time out of my day. I'm not getting paid to create this sermon. I've got a job as a school teacher, but this is just a pure act of love to say, hey, I care about you, and I want every person that hears this video to know that you're loved. And that's an act of service for me. In my house, again, there's 7 of us with a lot of good needs, and there's just many moments where I am having conversations with the people I love. Yesterday, Kayla had a friend who is in a bad family situation. She's depressed, and this friend actually made kind of a suicidal comment. And so Kayla and I prayed for this friend, and I tried to encourage Kayla of how to encourage this friend during these crazy times with this heaviness on her. I could go on, and it's not about me tooting my horn, but just saying to you, hey, you have things inside of you that you can bless. And so even though we can't, the Well community is amazing. I remember how many times we used to do prayer requests, and almost every time someone would say, hey, let's pray for the homeless today. You guys were thinking about the ones who were less fortunate, that had a need, and we had to remember those people. And I can't list every time where, as we come together, the way that the Well community blesses each other, the people that are going around and giving somebody a pat on the back or an encouragement, and the calls that I've heard about during the week. I feel like in some ways, ever since I've left the Well, I left in 2012. It's been 8 years since I've been gone, and yet the love of the Well community continues because the Well is you guys, and you have that love. You are knowing and acting. You see a need and you do it. And so how much more in these times of social distancing can we care for those? Give somebody a roll of toilet paper. Give somebody a call and a prayer that maybe seems isolated or down. Jesus says that we are to do as he did. I don't want to go into the weeds here, but I just think that sometimes when we come back to gathering, and when I think about the bread, and I think about people taking communion, in Corinthians, Jesus says, whenever you do this, he says, do this in remembrance of me. And so again, just like we can't have Easter services this week, but Easter has happened, we can't share this bread And I don't think you need a priest. Some people believe you need a priest, but I don't think you need a priest. I think you can get a little bread and you can have it at home. But you know what's more important than this ceremony, taking a cup and eating the bread, is when Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me, I think he's exactly saying, follow my example. He says, it says in the Bible, it says, take up your cross and follow me. It says, Jesus says, I've washed your feet. Hey, I've set an example. You be a servant. You get on your hands and knees and humble yourself and take care of other people. Jesus gathers his friends around a table, and it was his friends and enemies. Jesus welcomes everybody to the table. Judas was there. He wasn't excluded. Peter was there, and Jesus knew that he would deny him and that Peter was a mess up. All of his friends within the next 24 hours of this meal were going to run away from him. And yet Jesus is there welcoming them all to the table. And so when Jesus says, this is my body, this is the cup, do this in remembrance of me, I don't think it means just taking a cup, eating some bread. It means to do as he has done. Love, sacrifice, follow, be a blessing. Okay, sorry, that was a little aside there from the main message. But three things I want you to hear today is that God knows what you're going through. He sees and hears your cries. God acts. He's not leaving you alone, but he is working good in these times. He's caring for you and trying to bring blessing. And you need to do the same. That's the third thing. And so just as I close, I'm going to close here in a second with a reading of the Psalm, Psalm 116. But before I do that, I just want to say it again. Despite not being there in the room with you, whatever you're feeling today, if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling hurt or anxious, God hears and sees what you're doing. He bends down and he hears that cry. You're not alone. He acts. God is always acting. He never leaves us or forsakes us. He says that he will love us to the end in this passage in John. And so know that whatever you're feeling right now, God is acting on your behalf to take care of you. And if you can receive those two things, if you can know that God hears you, if you can know that God is working on your behalf, if that brings a joy and a peace and a love to your heart, then all I ask is share that with someone else today. This Easter season, when we can't come together, find a way to be a blessing. That's my sermon for today. Let me close with a reading from a psalm. And so I'm going to read from this book that I like, Psalms for Praying. And it's taking Psalm 116 and playing with it a little bit. But I love these words today, and so I share it with you to close out. As the psalmist prays to God, so do we. Receive my love, O beloved. You who hear my voice and hear my cries. You bend your ear down to me, and I call upon you with trust both day and night. What shall I give to you for all your goodness to me? I will drink the cup of love and praise you who have done wondrous things. I will bear witness to you, O bread of life, in the presence of all the people. Precious to you are all who abandon themselves to your will. O beloved, consider me your friend and servant. I long to procreate with you, for you have loosened the bonds of fear in me. I will offer to you a gift of gratitude, and acknowledge your loving presence with joy. I will bear witness to you, O giver of life, in the presence of all the people. That's my benediction. Be a blessing today, someone. Hey, down at the bottom of this video, there's some links to the scriptures that I shared today. I think we're also going to put some links to some videos with songs. Hopefully by next week, we'll have some live musicians, Josh and Ben and David and other people putting together some music for you guys. But today we've got some other videos down there. Also, I'll be watching YouTube over the next day or so. And so if you want to comment on this video, I'll try to comment back and just say a word of love and greeting to you. So as it says in Corinthians, today, proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. I love you guys. Hope you guys have a great Easter. Hope to see you soon in person. Blessings.